My dear friends, let me introduce myself. I'm Shmuel, born in the old port city of Odessa, back when the world was a different place. Harsh winds from the Black Sea, and families huddled around the Shabbat table sharing stories that could light up the darkest nights. I'm 80 now, and I've seen enough of life's twists to know that the longest, most peaceful days aren't built on luck or grand plans. No, they're woven from quiet truths our people have passed down like threads in a tallit. Today, I'll share one such story about a man named Haim, much like the ones I knew in my youth. It's a tale that starts in the middle of a storm because that's how life often hits us, sudden, without warning. Sit back, pour yourself a cup of tea, and listen close. You might just find a candle in your own heart. Picture this. It's a chilly evening in Odessa, the kind where the fog rolls in thick from the sea, muffling the sounds of the city. Haim, a sturdy man in his 50s, an engineer by trade with calloused hands from fixing machines in the factory, stands frozen at the window of his small apartment. His wife Sarah is in the kitchen, humming a soft Yiddish melody as she sets the table for their modest dinner. Their 2 children, little Rivka and young David, are doing homework in the next room. Everything feels ordinary, safe, like the steady tick of a clock. But then, Haim pulls an old, yellowed letter from his pocket, one his father had slipped him years ago before passing. The words are faded, but they stir something deep. Haim, my son, remember the first rule. Listen to the silence. It's not empty. It's where the real voices hide. He's about to fold it away when a sharp knock echoes through the door, like thunder cracking the quiet. The door bursts open before Haim can even turn the knob. 2 men in dark coats, militia, their faces hard as stone, push inside, badges glinting under the dim bulb. "Haim Levin!" one barks, his voice cutting the air. Sarah drops a plate. It shatters on the floor, porcelain scattering like broken dreams. The children huddle behind her, eyes wide with fear. "You're under arrest for anti-Soviet activities," the other says, snapping handcuffs on Haim's wrists. He doesn't resist, can't really, his mind reeling. Anti-Soviet? Him? The man who fixed tractors for the state? Who lit candles in secret at synagogue on holidays, whispering prayers for peace? They drag him out into the night, the cold biting his skin, while Sarah's cries fade behind him. In that moment, as the van door slams shut, Haim feels a weight in his chest, heavy as a stone dropped into still water. What had he done? Or worse, what had his quiet life hidden from him all these years? Down in the dim cell, the air smells of damp concrete and old sweat, the kind of place where hope goes to wither. Haim sits on the hard bench, rubbing his wrists where the cuffs chafed, his mind a whirlwind. The other prisoners mutter in the shadows. Thieves, dissidents, a mix of souls caught in the same net. One, an older fellow with a scruffy beard, eyes Haim curiously. "New here? What did they pin on you?" Haim shakes his head, too stunned to speak at first. Fear grips him like an old friend he never wanted back. Fear for Sarah, alone now, wondering if the children will eat tomorrow. Fear that this is the end of the life he built, brick by quiet brick. But then, as he pats his pockets, his fingers brush something unexpected. That letter from his father, crumpled but intact. He unfolds it in the faint light, and there, scribbled in the margin, is a strange mark, a tiny drawing of an ear like listening to the wind. No explanation, just those words about silence. And here's where it gets stranger, my friends. Later that night, when the guard's footsteps fade, Haim hears a soft scrape under the bench. He lifts the edge of the thin mattress and finds it, a small, worn book tucked away like a secret. It's a piece of the Torah, pages yellowed and edges frayed, probably smuggled in by someone long gone. He opens it carefully, heart pounding, and there, on the first page, someone has written, in faded ink, "The drop that wears the stone, patience in the quiet." Haim's breath catches. Who left this? And why? It doesn't make sense. His life was simple, devoted to family, to the subtle joys of Shabbat candles flickering against the window. Yet this book feels like a whisper from the past, pulling at threads he never knew were there. His father had always said little about his own youth, only hints of hiding during the old pogroms, of a grandfather who was a rabbi in secret. Was this arrest tied to that? Some echo of forbidden faith? The questions pile up like snow in winter, each one colder, heavier. Haim clutches the book, the cell walls closing in, and wonders, if silence is a rule, why does it feel like a trap now? As the hours stretch into what feels like days, Haim leans back against the wall, the Torah heavy in his lap. The shock starts to settle, like dust after a fall, and he sees the shape of it all for the first time. This isn't just about him. It's Sarah waiting in terror, the children, their future yanked away, his whole world, the one he thought was steady as the Odessa docks, crumbling under accusations he can't even grasp. How did my quiet days lead here, he thinks, voice barely a murmur in his mind. What truths did Father bury in those rules he whispered over the Shabbat Challah, rules about listening, about enduring? If I don't uncover them, we'll all be lost. And in that dim cell, with the weight of generations pressing down, Haim makes his choice. He won't rot here whispering regrets. No, he'll find a way out, follow the clues in that hidden book, seek the silence his father meant, not as fear, but as a guide. He tucks the Torah under his shirt, heart racing, and waits for the next guard's round. Little does he know, the man who brings his stale bread that morning is named Yisrael, an old acquaintance from the synagogue shadows, with a wink and a whisper, "Your father's silence saved him once. Use it wisely, or it'll swallow you whole." Haim nods, slipping a note into the guard's palm, a plea for Sarah. His first step into the unknown, towards Israel and answers that could remake everything, or break him for good. Remember Haim, our quiet engineer from Odessa, clutching that hidden Torah like a lifeline as he stepped into the unknown? Well, let's see how his first real steps unfolded, guided by those old rules his father whispered. Life doesn't give easy paths, but it does offer glimmers of hope, even if they're fleeting. Haim's escape from that cell wasn't a grand breakout from the stories, no dramatic chase through the snowy streets. Yisrael, the guard with the knowing wink, slipped him papers and a train ticket south, murmuring something about debts from the old days. By dawn, Haim was on a rickety bus rattling toward the border, heart pounding with every checkpoint. He crossed into freedom not with fanfare, but with a forged passport and a prayer under his breath. Modeh ani lefanecha, thankful for this scrap of mercy. Weeks later, after a grueling journey through hidden routes and sympathetic hands, he stepped onto the sun-baked soil of Israel, the air thick with salt and promise. Tel Aviv welcomed him like an old friend, bustling markets, the hum of Hebrew that felt both foreign and familiar. He was a repatriate now, one of many, assigned a small apartment in a neighborhood of fellow Odessa Jews. No Sarah yet, no children, but the ache in his chest eased just a bit. This is a new start, he told himself, unpacking the Torah onto a rickety shelf. Father's rules will light the way. His first days were a blur of paperwork and orientation, learning the ropes at the absorption center, where officials handed out maps and lessons in this vibrant land. But Haim couldn't sit idle. The worry for his family gnawed like hunger. He sought out the local synagogue, a modest place called Beit Shalom, its walls echoing with prayers that reminded him of hidden gatherings back home. There, he met Rabbi Aaron, a gentle soul with a white beard and eyes that sparkled like the Mediterranean at dawn. "Welcome, brother," Aaron said, clasping Haim's hand. "What brings you here beyond the obvious?" Over a cup of strong tea in the rabbi's study, Haim poured out his story. The arrest, the separation, the cryptic notes from his father. Aaron listened, nodding slowly, then reached for a worn volume of the Talmud. "Your father was wise," he said. He knew the second rule: share your bread, not just with the hungry, but with the broken soul. Tzedakah isn't coins in a box. It's giving your time, your ear, to mend what's torn. Inspired, Haim took his first real step. The center had a volunteer program for new immigrants, and he signed up, spending his afternoons at a soup kitchen near the beach. There, amid the steam of boiling pots and the ease-beat chatter of Russian voices, he ladled out soup and listened to tales of loss, families scattered, dreams deferred. One man, an elderly painter named Moshe, shared how he'd lost his wife to the old regime's cruelties. Haim, remembering Sarah's shattered plate, sat with him long after the line ended, offering not pity, but his own story. "Sharing lightens the load," Moshe said, and for the first time, Haim felt a spark of progress. Word spread in the community. Soon, a letter arrived from Moscow through underground channels. Sarah was safe, working odd jobs, the children in school. "We're coming soon," she wrote. Hope bloomed like a desert flower after rain. Haim even sent back some of his meager stipend, a small act of tzedakah that made him feel connected, strong. These rules work, he thought, walking home under the stars. The silence led me here, and sharing opens doors. Reunion is just around the corner. But oh, my dear listeners, life has a way of testing that fragile optimism, doesn't it? Just when the path seems clear, it twists beneath your feet. Haim's victory with the letter fueled his next move. He scraped together funds for a flight back to Moscow, determined to bring Sarah and the children over legally. Rabbi Aaron warned him, "The waters are still choppy, go with care." But Haim, buoyed by his volunteer work, pressed on. He arrived in the gray chill of the Russian winter, heart full, only to find the apartment building cordoned off. Sarah was gone, vanished after a midnight knock. Panic set in as he tracked down old neighbors. "They took her for questioning," one whispered. "Something about your activities. Spying, they called it." Haim's world tilted. This wasn't random. It traced back to his factory days, to a colleague named David, a sharp-tongued engineer who'd always eyed Haim's quiet faith with envy. David had tipped off the militia years ago, not out of ideology, but spite, jealous of Haim's family, his unspoken resilience. The blow landed hard, like a wave crashing over the bow. Haim confronted David at his old workplace, the air thick with machine oil and resentment. "Why?" he demanded, fists clenched. David smirked at first, but then the mask cracked. "You think your silence made you better? It made you weak? I did what I had to for my own." In that moment, the scale of it hit Haim like a revelation from the Torah pages. This wasn't just one betrayal. It was a chain woven through the community, whispers of pogroms past where envy festered into poison. Now the threat loomed larger. Sarah accused of aiding a fugitive, the children questioned at school. If Haim pushed too hard, they could all be dragged down. His simple escape to Israel? It had stirred old shadows, endangering everyone he loved. No longer a personal storm, this was a tempest threatening the fragile web of Odessa's hidden Jews. Haim staggered back to his hotel, the letter from Sarah now a cruel tease. Passive waiting wouldn't do. He needed to fight smarter, deeper. Drawing on his father's words, he recalled a Shabbat teaching, the third rule. Forgive as you forget, releasing grudges like birds from a cage, lest they peck at your peace. Risky, yes, facing David again, offering olive branches in a den of thorns. But what choice? The stakes had risen from survival to salvation for his family and perhaps others caught in the same net. With the third rule burning in his mind, Haim gathered what strength he had left, a tattered notebook of Talmudic quotes smuggled from Israel, and a list of community contacts Rabbi Aaron had given him. This was his desperate push. Organize a quiet minyan in a backroom flat on the edge of Moscow, not for prayer alone, but to unearth the truth of the betrayals. He invited old synagogue friends, even David, under the guise of a memorial for lost souls. The room was dim, lit by a single bulb, the air heavy with tension as 10 men gathered, enough for the sacred quorum. Haim stood at the head, voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. "We've all stumbled," he began, opening the notebook. "The 4th rule my father lived by: learn from mistakes, like studying the Torah, not to judge, but to grow. David's envy, my silence, they're threads in the same tapestry. Let's unravel it together." For a heart-stopping hour, stories poured out, confessions of small treacheries, fears from the old days. David arrived last, defiant, but Haim met his gaze with forgiveness, reciting a line from the sages. "A word spoken in kindness mends what anger breaks." The minyan worked its subtle magic. David broke, admitting he'd forged the spy accusations out of lingering grudge from a workplace slight years ago. Proof emerged, a hidden file, passed hand to hand. Haim had his key, documents to clear Sarah's name, enough to petition for their exit visas. Victory seemed sweet. By week's end, Sarah and the children were released, tearful reunions in a cramped cafe. "You did it?" Sarah whispered, holding him close. The family boarded a plane to Israel, the minyan's unity a shield against the cold stares at the airport. But Pyrrhic it was, my friends, a win stained with blood. In the chaos of the gathering, one elder, a quiet supporter named Levi, had a heart seize up from the stress, collapsing before dawn. He didn't make it, his last words a gasp about debts unpaid. Worse, David's confession rippled outward. Authorities, sensing the web, raided the flat hours after they left. Haim's name was whispered in reports, painting him as the ringleader. Now, in Tel Aviv, the family settled uneasily. Sarah shadowed by nightmares, the children quiet with the trauma. Haim stared at the sea from their new balcony, the Torah open on his lap, but the words blurred. He'd saved them, yes, but at what cost? Levi's death, the community's fracture, his own soul scarred by the weight of it all. "These rules were supposed to bring peace," he murmured to the waves, "not more graves." Despair settled like fog over the port, thick and unyielding. Everything lost, trust shattered, the path ahead darker than the cell he'd fled. No light, no rules left to cling to. Or so it seemed. Now, my dear friends, if the first 2 acts were the storm and the struggle, Act 3 is the dawn breaking through, faint at first, then fierce. Haim, our steadfast wanderer, sits at his lowest, the sea mocking his broken hopes. But remember, in our traditions, the darkest hour precedes the light of Shabbat. Let's walk with him through this turning point, where old rules flicker back to life and lead to a reckoning. Hold on, the path rises from here. The days blurred into a haze for Haim in that Tel Aviv apartment, the walls closing in like the cell back in Odessa. Sarah moved through the routines, cooking simple meals, tucking the children in with stories of safer times, but her eyes held a distant sorrow, the kind that lingers after a long winter. Little Rivka asked fewer questions now. Her drawings of family picnics faded. Young David stared out windows, silent as stone. Haim, though, was the storm's eye, pacing nights away, the Torah unopened on the table, guilt gnawing deeper with each breath. "I've failed them," he'd whisper to the empty room, replaying Levi's last gasp, David's half-hearted remorse, the raids that scattered old friends. The rules his father taught felt like empty echoes now. Listening to silence had led to arrest, sharing bread to death, forgiving to fresh wounds. Despair wrapped around him tight as a rope, pulling him toward surrender. Why fight? The world was a shader, a fragile tent torn by winds he couldn't outrun. He sat by the balcony one evening, the sun dipping into the sea like a weary traveler, and considered it. Just let go, fade into the routine, pretend the peace was real. But in that bottomless dark, a spark ignited, not from thunder, but a quiet memory. As the family gathered for their first Shabbat in Israel, Sarah lit the candles, her hand steady despite the tremble. "Modeh ani," she murmured, thanking for the small mercy of this table, this light. Haim watched, the flame dancing in her eyes, and something shifted. He recalled his father's voice over the challah back home. The fifth rule, find joy in the small, like simcha in a single olive, or the laughter of children. For great happiness is built from these seeds, not storms. It wasn't denial, it was choice, turning the everyday into a shield. The pieces clicked. His silence wasn't weakness, but a vessel for this joy. Sharing bread had connected souls, even in loss. Forgiveness had cleared the path here, to this very moment. Levi's death? A tragic thread, but not the end. His final words echoed now as a call to cherish what remained. Haim's chest loosened, the rope of despair fraying. No more hiding in regret. The true weakness was the enemy within, his unheeded heart blind to these blessings. With fresh eyes, he saw the sixth rule emerging from the Talmud's wisdom. Speak truth gently, Lashon Tov, words like soft rain that nourish rather than lash. And the seventh, build bridges, Shlomo Bayit, mending homes not with force, but steady hands. This was his epiphany, logical as the sun's rise. All the trials prepared him for this balance. He rose that night, resolute. One last plan, risky as crossing the Red Sea. Confront the shadows head on, not in Moscow's cold, but here in Israel, where roots could grow. He'd reach out to David through community channels, invite a true reconciliation, not for revenge, but to weave the family and friends back together. It was his only shot, a bridge over the abyss, or they'd all tumble in. Emboldened, Haim set the plan in motion the very next morning, the Mediterranean breeze carrying a hint of promise. He started small, speaking truth gently to Sarah over breakfast. I've been lost in the what-ifs, but your strength, this home, it's our joy. Let's build from here. Her tears came, but so did a smile, the first real one in weeks. Word spread quietly through the Odessa expat network. Rabbi Aaron connected him to a liaison in Russia, and soon a letter went out to David, not accusation, but invitation. Come to Israel. Let's honor Levi with peace, not more pain. Weeks passed in tense waiting, Haim finding Simcha in the routines, teaching David Hebrew by the beach, braiding challah with Rivka, each moment a brick in their new foundation. But the stakes climbed fast. Replies came laced with threats, shadowy figures from the old regime tipped off by David's loose tongue, now eyeing the family's visa status. Whispers reached Tel Aviv, deportation rumors, questions about agitators. Haim's heart raced. This wasn't abstract anymore. The children could be separated again, Sarah's fragile calm shattered. The confrontation brewed like a gathering cloud, culminating one humid afternoon at Beit Shalom. David arrived unannounced, stepping off a flight with haunted eyes, the weight of his actions etched deep. The synagogue's hall was filled, not just family, but a minyan of survivors, elders from Odessa who'd lost kin to the same poisons. Haim stood at the center, Torah open, voice calm as still water. David, brother, he began, Lashon Tov guiding every word. Your envy was a stone in your heart, but it rolled into mine too. We both stumbled, me in silence, you in anger. But joy in the small calls us back, this gathering, this chance. David flinched, the room tense as a drawn bow. He lashed out first. You think words fix graves? Levi's blood is on us both. And the stakes surged. A scuffle broke out as old grudges flared. One elder shoved forward, fists raised, while outside, officials waited with papers to revoke visas. Haim's plan teetered. David bolted toward the door, dragging the chaos with him. Rivka cried from the corner, Sarah shielding her. It seemed defeat, the bridges crumbling before they formed. Yet Haim held fast, drawing on the epiphany like a hidden flame. He stepped between them, hands raised, speaking truth not as a sword, but a balm. Wait, the seventh rule, build bridges, Shlomo Bayit, isn't easy. It's crossing the divide, even when it hurts. David, your pain from those factory slights, I see it now. Forgive me for not listening sooner. Let's honor Levi by choosing peace for our children. The words hung, soft rain on parched earth. David paused, shoulders slumping, the fight draining like tide at dusk. He confessed fully, the forgeries, the tips to authorities, born of his own losses in the purges. The minyan murmured prayers, unity weaving the air. Turns came swift, officials entered, but David's signed affidavit, truth laid bare, swayed them. Visas secured, threats dissolved. Haim embraced his old foe, not as enemy, but kin, the room erupting in quiet sobs and handshakes. Victory clear, hard won, no illusions, but a turning, the family whole, community mended, shadows named and banished. In the quiet aftermath, as the sun set over Tel Aviv, the dust of battle settled like fine sand. Haim walked the beach with Sarah, the children's laughter trailing behind, Rivka chasing waves, David skipping stones. The price lingered. Levi's absence a hollow in every prayer, David's path to redemption long and thorny. But the air felt lighter, the sea a mirror of calm. Months turned to years. Haim grew into the role of elder at Beit Shalom, his hands no longer fixing machines, but guiding others, teaching the rules over Shabbat tables where candles flickered against the night. Sarah's smile returned full, their home a true shader of warmth. Haim himself transformed. Wiser, the stone in his heart, worn smooth by drops of joy and gentle words. No longer the quiet engineer fleeing storms, he was a bridge builder, his life a testament that peace comes not despite trials, but through them. And as he lit the candles one Friday watching the flames dance, he knew. These 7 rules weren't chains, but wings, lifting toward a long, peaceful horizon, one small blessing at a time. My friends, with Act 3's light breaking through, you might think the tale wraps neatly, like a prayer book closed after Shabbat. But stories from our people rarely end so tidy. There's often one last veil to lift, a whisper that changes everything. Let's linger a moment in Haim's newfound calm, then see what stirs beneath the surface. Breathe easy now, but listen sharp. The weeks after that synagogue gathering unfolded like a soft exhale, the kind after holding your breath too long. Haim and Sarah sat on their balcony one golden evening, the sea whispering below as the children played in the courtyard, Rivka's laughter mingling with David's first clumsy Hebrew songs. David himself had stayed on, not as guest, but family. He'd found work at a nearby workshop, his sharp edges softened by the minyan's grace. The apartment smelled of fresh challah baking, candles ready for the coming Shabbat. Finally, Haim said, squeezing Sarah's hand, his voice warm with relief. The nightmare's over. These rules, listening, sharing, forgiving, they brought us here whole again. She nodded, leaning her head on his shoulder, the weight of years lifting like morning mist. The community buzzed with quiet stories of their reconciliation, Levi's memory honored in a small plaque at Beit Shalom. Peace settled, simple and real, a shader of harmony built from small joys. Haim closed his eyes, thinking, this is the long life Father meant, steady, without storms. Yet in that very stillness, as the sun dipped low, Haim's gaze fell on an old photo on the table. The family back in Odessa, smiles frozen before the arrest. A tiny detail caught him, a faint shadow behind his younger self, like an uninvited guest. His mind wandered, replaying the path. The cell's silence that hid his fears, the bread shared that masked his isolation, the forgiveness that covered old wounds. Then it struck, sharp as a needle through cloth. He sat up, breath-catching. It wasn't the militias or David's envy, he murmured to the empty air, the realization dawning slow but sure. Nor the pogroms echoing from Father's time. The real enemy, the one that shattered my world again and again, was my own shadow. That deep fear of opening up, of letting the heart show its cracks. I'd built walls in the name of quiet strength, but they trapped me, reflecting back as betrayals and losses. The arrests? They mirrored my unspoken doubts about faith. Levi's death? Born from my hesitation to bridge sooner. Even the rules, Father's gifts. I'd twisted them into shields, not wings, because vulnerability terrified me most. The events reshaped in his mind, tragic and clear. His silence in the factory hadn't protected. It invited David's resentment, an echo of his own buried envy for freer lives. The Mignon's triumph? Hollow if the inner storm raged on. Sarah noticed his quiet, touched his arm. "What is it?" He shared it all, voice gentle, the Lashon Tov now turned inward. No blame, just truth. The external foes were symptoms, the true battle waged in the soul's hidden corners. Haim wept then, not from loss but release, the stone in his heart finally cracking open. This twist didn't undo the peace. It deepened it, promising a life unshadowed if he faced the fear head on. And in that moment, Haim's story stopped being just one man's journey through trials and triumphs. It became a mirror for us all, reflecting the quiet battles we carry from our own tables and synagogues. What if the greatest danger we fight, not people or fates, but the unseen parts of ourselves we push away? The answer to that, my friends, is the heart of what comes next, the truth that ties these 7 rules into something eternal. But what happened to Haim in the quiet years after that balcony epiphany wasn't the end of the tale, not by a long shot. Far more telling was why these storms had crashed into his life at all, and how they echo in our own. You see, my friends, we've walked with him through arrests and reconciliations, but the real thread, the one that pulls it all taut, is hidden in the pauses between the rules themselves. Have you ever paused in your own day, looking back at a choice that seemed right, only to wonder why it led to the same old ache? Why do we circle back to the same hurts, generation after generation, even with all the wisdom at our fingertips? That's the question Haim finally faced. And it's one I share with you now from my 80 years of watching souls unfold. Not many dwell on this, but trust an old storyteller like me. The 7 rules: listening to silence, sharing bread, forgiving freely, learning from stumbles, finding joy in the small, speaking truth with kindness, building bridges. They're not a checklist for a long life. They're keys to a deeper lock, one most of us never turn. I tell you this like we're sitting at my Odessa table, just you and me, because what follows could shift how you see your tomorrows. And here's the truth that hit Haim like the first light after a long night. The secret to a truly peaceful, enduring life isn't following rules outward, but using them to face the shadow inside, the fear or grudge we carry like an unseen weight, repeating patterns until we name it. Haim's arrests, his losses, even David's envy. They weren't fate's cruelty, but mirrors of his own guarded heart, the silence that hid not strength, but a quiet terror of being truly seen. The rules broke the circle when he turned them inward. Listening revealed his doubts. Sharing healed his isolation. Forgiving released the grudge he'd nursed on his father's unspoken pains. It's the same for us. Life's wheel spins on these hidden forces, shortening our peace until we pause, reflect, and choose vulnerability as our greatest ally. Our sages knew a soul in balance, shadow acknowledged, stretches days into years of real serenity, like a candle that burns steady, not wild. So, as Haim grew old in that Tel Aviv shader, teaching these truths to his grandchildren, what shadow might you be carrying today, one that dims your own quiet joys? What small step, drawn from these rules, could turn the wheel for you? Think on it, my friends. Stories like Haim's that reshape how we live, we unpack right here, one revelation at a time. To catch the next one that might light your path just a little brighter, well, you know the way. Subscribe, and let's keep the conversation going.